Hello children, welcome back in the history class of 6th standard. So children, in the previous class we had discussed lesson number 10, the golden age, Gupta Empire till early Gupta kings, Chandragupta I and Samudragupta. So children, now I would like to take feedback of the previous topic through some questions. So the first question is, who married the Lichavi princess Kumar Devi? And second question is, write in brief about the campaigns of Samudragupta. So students, I hope you are able to answer all these questions. Now, in today's class, we are going to read about Chandragupta II, and we will also read the two features of the Gupta dynasty, administration and revenue in today's class. So children, let's have a look on the important term related to the today's video. Decentralize. To distribute the administrative power from central to local government. Now let's start reading. Page number 93. Chandragupta II, AD 375 to 415. Samudragupta was succeeded by his son Chandragupta II. He was one of the most well-known rulers of India who took the title of Vikramaditya. He defeated the last king of the Shaks and took control over the three major seaports on the western coast, namely Badajoz, Cambay and Sopara. These were the outlets to vast overseas trade. This brought economic growth and prosperity in his kingdom. He also maintained friendly relations with the Deccan and the southern kingdoms. He married his daughter Prabhavati Gupta to Rudrasen II, the Vakatak king. He shifted his capital to Ujjain. Chandragupta II succeeded his father Samudragupta in 375 AD. He is also known as Vikramaditya, which means as powerful as the sun. He defeated the Shak rulers who ruled over the ports of Badajoz, Cambay and Sopara, and so became very powerful. Vikramaditya maintained friendly relations with the southern kingdoms. Chandragupta II formed strong relations with Vakataks by marrying his daughter to Vakatak king Rudrasen II. Let's read further. Chandragupta II is especially remembered for his patronage to art and literature. He encouraged learned men in his court. The Navratans or 9 gems lived in his court. These included Kalidas, the poet, and Aryabhat, the astronomer. The Chinese traveller Fahian visited India in AD 405. He wrote a detailed account of the Gupta dynasty. Patronage means support given by a patron. Astronomer means an expert of astronomy. So children, Chandragupta II was a great patron of art and literature. His court was adorned with 9 gems or Navratna, which included the great poet Kalidas and the astronomer Aryabhat. The Chinese traveller Fahian, who visited India during Chandragupta II's rule, gave us the valuable information related to the Gupta's empire. Now, children, see do you know box? Fahian, AD 399 to 411, was a Chinese traveller who visited India during the reign of Chandragupta II. He stayed for 6 years in India. He had come to India in search of the Buddhist books. He visited all the places connected with the Buddha and his life like Lumbini, Vaishali, Nalanda, Gaya, Bodh Gaya and Rajgrih. He also went to Gandhar, Takshila and Peshawar. Before his return, he left some valuable information about the political, social and religious life of India under the Gupta administration. Thus, his account is our most reliable source for the history of the Gupta period. So, students, Fahian was the Chinese traveler who visited India to study Buddhist texts during the rule of Chandragupta II. So, students, he visited all the places which were connected with Buddha and his life, like Lumbini, Vaishali, Nalanda, Gaya, and Rajgriha. He also visited Gandhar, Takshila, and Peshawar. In his account, he wrote about the political, social, and religious life of India under the Gupta administration. So, his account is the most valuable source of information about the Gupta Empire. So, children, till now we have studied early Gupta kings. Now we are going to talk about later Gupta kings. Chandragupta II was succeeded by his son Kumargupta. His successor was Skandgupta. Both were powerful rulers. Skandgupta's successors were weak and they could not protect the empire from the Hunas, the nomadic tribes of Central Asia. Ultimately, this led to the fall of the great Gupta dynasty of India. Now, students, we are going to read about the later Gupta kings. So, Kumar Gupta, the son of Chandragupta II, was succeeded him. Then, Kumar Gupta's son, Skandgupta, succeeded him. These both rulers were very powerful, but they were the last great rulers of the Gupta Empire. Their successors were weak. They could not protect the empire from the Hunas. Hunas were the nomadic tribe of Central Asia who invaded the Gupta Empire. So, the empire slowly declined due to weak successors. Now, children, we are going to read about chief feature of the Gupta dynasty. So, children, in today's class, we are going to read only the two chief features, administration and revenue. First of all, see administration. The king was the head of the administration. He was benevolent and had knowledge of the art of administration. The Gupta kings were fond of lofty titles like the Param Devta, Param Bhatrak, Maharaj Diraj, Prithvipal, Parmeshwar, Samrat, etc. The eldest son of the king was usually selected as the Yuvraj. Students, benevolent means kind, lofty means noble character. The head of the administration was the king. He was kind and had the knowledge of the working of the administration. The Gupta kings liked to adopt titles like the Param Devta, Param Bhatrak, Maharaj Diraj, Prithvipal, Parmeshwar, Samrat, etc. So, students, there was a tradition under the Gupta Empire to select the eldest son of the king as the Yuvraj. Let's read further. The king was assisted by a council of ministers. The empire was called Rajya or Rashtra. It was divided into many provinces or bhuktis. The bhukti was generally administered by princes of royal blood. He was assisted by Baladi Karnika, head of military, Dand Pashadi Karnika, chief of police, Ran Bhandarika, chancellor of military exchequer, Mahadandyak, chief justice, Vinay Sthiti Sthapak, minister of law and order. The provinces were further divided into districts or Vishya. It was headed by the Vishyapati and assisted by Mahatras, village elders, Gramikas, village headmen, Solkikas, collector of customs, Golmika, in charge of forests and forts. Let's continue reading. The districts were further divided into villages. A union of villages was called Petak and Santak. The head of the village was called the Gramik. He was also assisted by a number of officers. The head of a city was called the Purapal or Nagar Rakshak. The Purapal Uparik controlled the heads of various cities. There was a parishad of local citizens that helped the Purapal in administration. So, the head of the administration was the king. He was helped by a council of ministers in the administration. The whole empire was known as Rajya or Rashtra. The Rajya was divided into provinces, which means states. The term Bhukti was used for the provinces. The Bhukti was generally governed by the prince of royal blood. For the administration of the Bhukti, the prince was helped by a number of assistants. For example, Baladi Karnika, head of military, Dand Pasadi Karnika, chief of police, Ran Bhandarika, chancellor of military exchequer, Mahadandyak, Chief Justice, Vinay Sthiti Sthapak, Minister of Law and Order. Then, children, the provinces were divided into districts. Districts were known as Vishyas. The head of the Vishya was the Vishyapati. So, children, the Vishyapati was also assisted by a number of ministers like Mahatras, who were the village elders, Gramikas, village headmen, Salkikas, collector of customs, Golmika, in charge of forests and forts. Then the districts were divided into villages. There was a union of villages under the Gupta rule called Pethak and Santak. The Gramik was the head of the village. He was helped by a number of officers in the administration of village. The head of the city was known as the Purapal or Nagar Rakshak, whose duty was to control the various cities. There was some members of local citizens who helped the Purapal in administration. Now come to the next chief feature, revenue. The main source of revenue was land tax or udrang, which varied from 1/6 to 1/4 of produce. Other taxes were the uparik, tax on cultivators who had no proprietary rights on land, Vashtek, forced labor, Dasaprad, fine for 10 offences, Bhog, nominal tax on goods taken from one place to another, Hiranya, tax on gold, etc. Proprietary means personal. So, children, land tax was the main source of income, which was differed according to the total produce. So, children, besides land revenue, there were some another taxes like the uparik, which was levied on that cultivators who had no personal rights on land. Vashtek was a tax on forced labor. The Saprad was a tax on criminals for 10 crimes. Bhog was a kind of tax on goods taken from one place to another, and Hiranya was a tax on gold, etc. Let's continue reading. The Gupta administration was well organized both in the center and the provinces. The king kept himself well informed about the happenings in the provinces, districts, and villages. The administration was decentralized and local bodies had great powers. The king took care of the welfare of his subjects. He built shrines and gave lands, houses, gardens, and bullocks for cultivation. So, children, decentralized means an organization controlled by several local officers or authorities rather than one single one. Shrine means holy place. So, students, the central and the provincial administration of the Gupta Empire were very efficient. So, as the Gupta Empire was too large, it was very difficult to be governed directly from one center. Due to this reason, the administration was decentralized. Or you can say, for administrative efficiency, the empire was divided. The Gupta kings also built holy places and gave land, houses, gardens, and bull carts for cultivation. So, students, our today's class is over. I hope the topic is clear to you. Your homework is do question number 3 of exercise 5 on copy.